The rain had been falling since before daylight, steady enough to turn the road shoulder into paste and make every low place shine like a trap. Elsie Ward kept one hand on the strap of her brother's satchel and the other around the back of his coat, steering him through the wet grass as if he were much younger than 11. Toby did not complain. That worried her more than any complaint could have. He had been coughing since the canning shed. Foreman locked the office and told the last day workers there would be no pay until the coastal trucks came in. The trucks had not come. The office had stayed locked. Toby's breath had begun to whistle by noon. The shortcut had looked sensible on the old delivery map nailed beside the shed scale. Follow the service road through the pines, cross the bramble spur, and Briar Junction would be less than 3 miles away. There was a clinic there, or at least a nurse who kept hours in the old bank building. And Elsie had 2 crumpled bills, a pay stub no one had honored, and a brother whose fever had made him quiet. By the time the service road ended at a timber gate and dissolved into ruts, turning back felt more dangerous than continuing. The tracks appeared beyond a stand of black gum trees, raised on a low bed of cinder and dark stone. They looked abandoned, but not harmless. Brown grass grew between the ties, and vines hung from the signal wires. Yet the rails themselves held a dull, wet line where rain ran cleanly along the steel. On the far side, through poplars, Elsie could see the square white crown of a water tower. Town letters showed faintly through the mist. Briar Junction, medicine, heat, a telephone, maybe a room where Toby could sleep without rain ticking above him. Almost there, she said, though she had promised herself not to say it again. Toby gave her a look that told her he knew what the words were worth, but he kept moving. A signal mast stood 20 yards to the left, half swallowed by trumpet vine. It had a round hooded lamp above a rusted ladder and a wooden relay box at its foot. The glass was dark. Elsie had seen dead signals along branch lines before. They always looked like men left on watch after everyone else had gone home. She stepped onto the first slope of ballast. A voice came out of the reeds. "Do not cross those tracks." Elsie jerked Toby behind her. An old man stood at the edge of the ditch, where there had been only sedge and rain a second before. His beard was yellow-white. His coat had been mended with pieces of other coats, and he leaned on a long pole with a forked iron end. Mud swallowed his boots to the ankle, but he stood in it with the trust of a person who knew every treacherous inch. "We're just crossing," Elsie said. "Then you are just drowning. We need the town. The town will still be there if you wait. You may not. There isn't even a train." I did not say train. His eyes moved from Elsie to Toby's throat wrap, then back to the rails. "Step down." Elsie did not. Hunger and fear had made her stubborn, and too many men had used warnings as fences. "The signal's dead." A dry click sounded inside the box at the mast's foot. The old lamp above them fluttered once behind its wet glass. Then it filled with red. Toby made a small sound. The red was not bright like a traffic light. It glowed deep and uneven, as if a coal had woken behind the lens. Rain beaded across it until the signal looked like an eye opening underwater. Elsie had no time to decide what it meant. Beneath the rails, the bed groaned. The sound was wooden, low, and wrong. The cross ties ahead rose just enough to shed water from their edges, then settled crooked. A seam opened between 2 sleepers, and black water welled through the ballast in one glossy pulse. Farther down the line, a tuft of grass beside the rail vanished, as if something had pulled it under. The rail nearest Elsie trembled without the sound of wheels. The old man hooked the fork of his pole around Toby's satchel strap and drew him another pace back. Elsie slapped the pole away, but she did not step toward the rails again. "Seconds," the old man said. "That is all the signal gives when the bog is quick." Toby whispered, "Was that a train?" "No, if it had been a train, you would not be asking." Elsie stared at the black water seeping through the track. What is this place? Peat under iron. Men laid rail where land had never agreed to be land. When the water rises, the track floats. When it floats, it twists. When it twists, anything crossing goes with it. Tracks don't float. Anything floats if men build proud enough. He led them away from the slope, not toward town, but along the near ditch, testing each step with the forked pole. A yard from the rail, the earth seemed firm. 2 yards farther, the pole sank almost to the handle without meeting bottom. Elsie kept Toby's hand tight in hers. The red signal burned behind them. The shortcut had become a warning with rails through it. They reached a small rise under leaning cedars. A low roof of flattened oil tins clung to a larger shape buried in vine. The old man tore away creeper with his pole, revealing a blackened brick wall and a narrow door with an iron pull ring. Above it, lichen covered most of the painted words, but Elsie could still read enough. Bramble cut waterlock signal, number 7. "This yours?" she asked. "It belongs to the work," he said. "I only remain near it." "That's not an answer." "It is the one I have." His name was Silas Croft. He gave it after opening the door with a flat strip of metal and ushering them inside. The room beyond was dry, low-ceilinged, and warmer than the rain. A pot-bellied stove waited in the corner with reed bundles stacked beside it. A map table filled the center. On the walls hung rubberized coats, lanterns, glass tubes capped in brass, coils of wire, and wooden slats tied in bundles. The place was not a shack. Not exactly. It was a working room that had survived after the work was forgotten. Toby sank onto the bench and coughed until his shoulders shook. Silas lit the stove without fuss and handed Elsie a stone jug. "Boiled this morning." She smelled the water before giving it to Toby. Clean enough. He drank with both hands around the jug. On the wall, a small red lens glowed inside a metal cup. Beside it, a needle hovered between burned marks on a board. Low, sound, float, sheer, lost. It sat near float and trembled toward sheer. Toby wiped his mouth. "Lost sounds bad." Silas glanced at him. "Lost means the bog has stopped negotiating." Elsie stepped to the map table. The rail line crossed a blank shape marked Black Pond. Beneath it, someone had carved, "Pete has no promise." Other lines branched under and beside the tracks. West Rake, East Relief, Anchor Rods, Walker's Throat, Lower Wheel. The map did not show towns or roads. It showed what held the tracks above the dark. "My brother needs the clinic," she said. "Then he needs the track to stay where it is." "How long before the signal changes back?" "If it is only lift, an hour. If the rake is choked, until the water drops. If the west anchor has started cutting loose, not before something tears." A heavy knock sounded under the floor, deep and hollow. The red lens flared. The needle jerked closer to sheer. Toby flinched. "What was that?" "Counterweight 3, Silas said. His calm thinned at the edges. The old work trying to hold. "You know how to fix it," Elsie said. "I know how it was fixed when I had 2 good knees and another hand beside me." She looked at Toby, then at the door, then at the red signal shadowing the wet glass. She had spent years doing work other people called simple because they didn't notice the ways simple work could maim. She had cleared jammed belts, hauled crates, patched stovepipe, learned when metal was about to bite by the pitch it made. Work was frightening only when people lied about what it was. "What tools?" she asked. Silas studied her, as if deciding whether desperation could be trained quickly enough. Then he took down a rubberized coat, too large for her, a caged lantern, a short rake with iron teeth, a folding knife, a cord belt, and a bone whistle. "Rule 1, he said. Never put weight between the rails when red shows." I learned that. Rule 2. If water speaks under wood, back away. What does water speaking sound like? You will know by not liking it. That is a poor instruction. It is an honest one. Toby pushed himself upright. I can watch the needle. No, Elsie said. I can sit. I can read marks. If it moves, I call. Silas looked at him for a long moment, then nodded toward a tin speaking tube that ran down through the floor. If the needle reaches shear, call once. If it touches lost, turn the black crank hard toward the wall. It drops the outside arm full red and rings the road bell. Will that help? It may frighten foolish men. Are there foolish men? There usually are. The trap behind the stove opened into darkness. Silas descended first, testing each ladder rung. Elsie followed with the lantern. The space below smelled of wet wood, cold iron, and black water lying where sun had never reached. At the bottom, a narrow brick gallery ran parallel to the tracks, its plank walkway raised above a channel of moving water. Rods and chains traveled along the wall through iron guides. Small glass ports showed only dim brown light when the lantern crossed them. Rain became a hiss overhead. Somewhere deeper, the marsh dragged against timber with a slow, patient sound. Silas moved with pain, but also certainty. He stopped at a vertical pipe and put his palm against it. Float chain, outside water lifting, not surging yet. A bell rang above, one clean note. Toby's voice came through the speaking tube, thin and proud. Needle moved toward shear. The cracked glass is bubbling. Silas closed his eyes. West rake is choked. They went deeper. The gallery narrowed. The channel ran faster beside the plank. An alcove held tools arranged by size and use. Reed hooks, mallets, square bolts, tin funnels, a wrench with a curved jaw. Names had been stamped into metal tags nailed to the beams. Gate planed by H. Russo. Rod set true by Emma Eames. Glass changed in hard rain. Not memorials, Elsie thought. Proof of hands. Who built all this? She asked. Trackmen, swamp cutters, signal hands, 2 pump makers, and a widow who understood peat better than the railroad did. Why is it still working? Because they expected to be forgotten and built against it. The passage opened into a round chamber beneath the signal mast. A wheel taller than Elsie turned slowly in a black channel, driven by water falling through wooden cups. Its axle moved rods overhead. Painted weights hung against one wall. Red halfway down, white trembling, green high. A gauge glass bubbled with tea-colored water. Above it, a brass plate read, "When red falls, trust red." The rail may look like land. It is not land. Silas wiped a small peephole with his sleeve. Through warped glass, Elsie saw the ditch outside, the underside of the track bed, and beyond the reeds, a truck parked on the far side. A winch line ran from its rear into the grass. 2 men in rain capes worked near the rail shoulder. "What are they doing?" she asked. "Stealing iron they think is dead." "The rail?" "The anchor first. Easier to cut. Worse to lose." The tube chirped again. Toby's voice sharpened. "Red glass is jumping. Someone is outside." Silas leaned close. "Bar the door. Do not open." "I did already," Toby said. "He's yelling." A fist struck the signal house door above, hard enough to send dust from the gallery ceiling. A man's muffled voice shouted for Silas to open. The old man's face tightened. If they cut west anchor while the rake is choked, the mat can roll. Then we stop them. First, we clear the rake. Water pressure is the hand on the knife. At the west rake, the channel ended in a grate packed with cane, roots, leaves, and chewed sticks. Water pressed against the jam until the iron bars bowed inward. Silas braced himself against the wall. Elsie knelt on the plank and worked with the short rake. Hook, pull, drop. Hook, pull, drop. Sour cane slapped her chest. Mud speckled her face. A dead branch fought like a living thing before breaking free. Each piece she removed let the water hiss through the grate with more force. The rods overhead rattled. Toby banged 3 times from above. "Needle it sheer," Silas said. The jam loosened all at once. A mat of cane folded inward and vanished through the culvert, dragging the rake from Elsie's hands. Water lunged through the grate. The plank kicked under her knees. Silas seized the back of her coat and hauled her against the brick as a wave slapped over the walkway and filled one boot. For several breaths, they could only listen. The channel roared, then steadied. The pressure had changed. "Did it work?" Elsie asked. "Some. Some isn't enough." "No." They climbed back to the signal room. Toby had dragged the bench against the door and wedged a chair under the pull ring. He sat by the black crank, pale but determined. Outside, the man shouted again. Silas lifted a slit panel. "Name yourself." "Benton Stagg. Stagg Recovery. County sale. Open before we cut the hinge. If your paper covers scrap, it does not cover signal gear, water locks, or anchor iron. It covers attachments to the bramble spur. The attachments are holding the track over a live bog." A younger voice laughed. "Everything's live if you ask a hermit." The needle jolted. The red lens flared so brightly the room seemed to pulse. Stagg shouted, "We've got half the west rod cut already. Argue title in town." Silas turned from the door. He cut the west rod. Toby's hand went to the crank. Needles almost lost. Silas opened a lower cabinet and took out a chain wrapped on a spindle, 2 iron shoes with toothed jaws, wedges, and a mallet. The bundle looked small until Elsie lifted it and felt the weight drag at her shoulder. "There is a service hatch from the gallery," Silas said. "You can reach the rod from under the near shoulder. Bright cut will show you where. First shoe above the cut, second below, chain between, wedge tight. Never put your hand behind the rod. If it jumps, it takes fingers. Above, below, chain, wedge. No hand behind the rod. If the track moves, lie flat. Let the motion pass through." Toby said, "I'll keep them at the door." "No opening it," Elsie said. "I know." "No matter what they say." "I know that too." She pressed her forehead to his for half a second, then went down. Alone, the gallery seemed longer. The machine sound separated into threats. The ticking float pipe, the slap of water, the tiny chatter of rods in their guides, the groan of the rail mat above. Past the round chamber, she crawled into a lower passage where timber cribbing replaced brick and roots hung through the seams like black string. The bite chain dragged behind her with a patient metallic clink. The triangle mark Silas had described was cut into a beam above a swollen hatch. Elsie worked the wooden turn button loose with her knife. Rain mist and cold air rushed in. Beyond lay a side grate at ditch level. Through it, she saw the underside of the track. Cypress stringers, iron straps, ballast netting, and a thick rod angling into black water. One place on the rod shone bright silver, where a saw had cut more than halfway through. The rod twitched. Boots splashed outside, less than 10 feet away. Elsie froze. The younger man's voice came over the ditch. "Benton, there's some old grate here. Leave it. Get the line higher. It's leaking. It's a marsh. Marshes leak." Elsie set the first iron shoe above the cut. It slipped twice before the teeth caught. She tapped the wedge with the mallet, gently at first, then harder. Each strike rang through the rod and into her bones. The winch clicked outside. The cut flexed wider. The road bell exploded above her. Toby had turned the crank. The old alarm rang across the marsh in hard, repeated blows. Red light flashed along the wet underside of the track. The young man outside swore and retreated from the grate. Elsie drove the second shoe below the cut. Mud fought her. She kept her fingers clear of the backside and struck until the wedge seated. She looped the bite chain through the notched links, pulled it tight, and reached for the locking pin. The track moved. It was not shaking. It was lifting, like a boat taking a wave from one side. The timber above her rose with a long complaint. The grate twisted. Water surged through the hatch and knocked the lantern against the wall. Elsie flattened herself against the plank, cheek in mud, arms spread. The chain snapped tight with a sound like a gunshot. For one breath, she thought it had broken. Then the wounded rod held. Outside, a man yelled in real fear. The winch line sang, then slackened. Something heavy toppled into the ditch. Elsie lay still until her own shaking became the largest movement in the world. Then she shoved the locking pin home and crawled backward, dragging the mallet because she could not bear to leave a tool to the dark. When she reached the signal room, Toby was on the floor by the crank, coughing and grinning. Silas opened the door, only as far as the chain latch allowed. Benton Stagg stood outside with rain streaming off his cape. The younger man, Roof Bellin, held one forearm against his chest and looked as if the marsh had spoken directly into his ear. Ground shifted, Stagg said, anger thinned by shock. It warned you, Silas answered. That signal has no right working. Yet, here it is. Elsie stepped into the doorway, muddy to the waist. You cut through a live anchor. I chained it from underneath. Stagg looked at her, then at the red lamp, then at his truck sunk crooked beyond the ditch. What happens if it fails? Silas pointed with his pole. The mat rolls, rails twist, Black Pond drains through the county road. Your truck goes first if the bog is feeling humorous. Roof took a step away from the truck. Stagg had papers. He had a county sale number. He had the habit of being obeyed. None of those helped when the rail bed groaned again, and the rear wheels of his truck sank another inch. What do you want? He asked. Stop cutting. Unhook your line. Bring clamps. This isn't my repair. It became yours when you made it worse. The next hour did not make them friends. It made them a crew. Stagg brought clamps and a jack. Roof followed Elsie below because Silas's knee would not take another crawl, and because Roof now had enough fear to listen. In the hatch, he saw the cut rod and went silent. Together, they set 2 heavy clamps over the bite chain, tightening the bolts until Elsie's arms burned and Roof's injured hand shook. He did not pull away when the rod twitched. That counted for something, though Elsie did not say so. Back in the signal room, the needle had retreated from Lost, but the outside lamp still burned red. Toby sat by the stove, wrapped in a blanket Stagg had fetched from his truck. His breathing rasped. The clinic was still on the far side, and the tracks remained impossible. There is a way under, Silas said at last. Elsie looked up. He traced a line on the map table. It curved below the rail bed and surfaced beyond the far ditch near the poplars. Walker's throat was carved beside it. You could have said that before. It was closed years ago. Bad air in still weather. Snakes in summer. Outer steps washed down. But rain moves air, and snakes have more sense than people tonight. Can Toby make it? Toby answered from the bench. Yes. Silas lifted a brass-capped tube with a paper strip inside. One end had turned gray. Air is moving. Not sweet, but moving. Count 5 doors. The 3rd sticks. The 4th sounds hollow. After the 4th, keep to the sideboards. If the 5th is closed, come back. Where does it come out? Poplar Road. Less than a mile from the clinic. Less than a mile. The words were almost cruel. Roof said, I'll go. I'm lighter than Stagg. I can carry the boy if he drops. Elsie did not want his help. She wanted clean lines between people who harmed and people who helped. The day had ruined that simplicity. She looked at Toby, then at Rufe's muddy boots and frightened face. "You come behind Toby," she said. "You listen." "I listen," he said. The entrance to Walker's throat lay beyond the round chamber behind a sliding cypress panel. Silas tied one end of a rope around Elsie's waist and kept the other in his hands. Do not be brave about bad air. Pride suffocates quietly. The passage swallowed them one careful step at a time. Elsie went first with the lantern low. Toby followed with a mask of waxed cloth over his nose and mouth. Rufe bent behind him with the tool satchel. The walls were packed peat and timber ribs, glistening with root threads. Water trickled in gutters on both sides. First door, only a raised sill over a shallow sump. Toby stepped over it without help. Second, an iron ring and old chains overhead, motionless. Third, a warped plank gate, stuck half open. Elsie and Rufe put their shoulders to it together. It broke loose at the bottom with a sigh of stale air. They waited until the lantern flame steadied, then passed through. Above them, the tracks scraped. Dust sifted from the beams. Rufe whispered, "Go back?" Toby, pale behind the cloth, shook his head. "It's moving behind us, too." Elsie listened. He was right. The underwalk itself held steady. Forward. Fourth door, hollow underfoot. Beyond it, the floor crossed a deeper channel. The middle boards sagged, but narrow side ledgers ran along the walls. Rufe crossed first, facing the timber. Toby followed. Halfway over, his cough struck. His foot slipped. Elsie threw her weight back on the rope, while Rufe lunged and caught the blanket at Toby's shoulder. For 1 second, Toby hung between them over black water, furious and terrified. "Breathe slow," Elsie said. "I hate this," he gasped. "Good. Hate it on the far side." They got him across. When Elsie crossed after him, she did not look down. Fifth door, closed. It was a round metal hatch with a wheel at the center, and the words, "Outer Poplar," painted in old white letters. The wheel would not turn. Rufe tried and failed. Water seeped beneath the lower edge. Toby, sitting against the wall, lifted the lantern with both hands. "There's writing under that brick." Elsie crouched, scratched beneath a shelf, where only someone low and desperate would see it, were 4 words and a small diagram. "Lift before turning." She pulled upward on the wheel. It shifted less than an inch with a wet clunk. Rufe wedged the bar under it. Then Elsie turned. The wheel groaned once, twice. On the third pull, something snapped free inside the latch, and the hatch flew inward under the pressure of rainwater from the broken steps outside. Cold air rushed over them. They climbed through a slit in the earth tangled with poplar roots and came out on the far side of the tracks. The red signal burned behind them across the rail bed. The town water tower stood close enough that Elsie could see rust streaks below its rim. Silas shouted from the signal side, distant but clear, "Do not cross back." Elsie raised both arms to show she had heard. Briar Junction was smaller than the water tower promised. A feed store, a closed lunch counter, a church with a coat donation banner, and the clinic in the old bank. The nurse opened the door and stopped asking questions as soon as she heard Toby breathe. She put him on a cot, set steam beneath his face, and sent Rufe for dry towels, while Elsie stood useless for the first time all day. Only when medicine was on the tray and Toby's eyes had closed did Elsie sit. Her hand still held the shape of rope. Mud dried on her skirt in gray scales. Rufe, dripping by the door, told a deputy that the old signal worked. The track had moved. Benton Stagg had cut a live anchor. And no, he was not confused. The deputy listened with the strained patience of a man being handed facts that did not fit any drawer he owned. "My grandfather used to say not to cross Bramble when the old lamp burned," the nurse said, wrapping a cuff around Toby's arm. The deputy frowned. "That lamp hasn't worked in my lifetime." "It worked today," Elsie said. Roof lifted his bandaged forearm. "It worked on me." By late afternoon, the rain had thinned to mist. Toby slept under a clinic blanket, breathing rough, but easier. The nurse said the medicine had been started in time, which was not a promise, but was near enough to let Elsie feel her own exhaustion. She could have stayed in the chair. Anyone fair would have said she had done enough. But enough was often the word people used when they wanted the remaining work to become invisible. She stood. The nurse looked up. "You need rest." "I need to go back." Toby's eyes opened before she touched him. "Signal still red?" "Probably. Count doors if you use the throat." "I will. And tell Silas the left glass bubbled before the bell." She smiled. "I'll tell him you saved the lock with your terrible numbers." "They're good numbers. The best." He closed his eyes. "Don't cross the tracks." "I won't." The deputy drove Elsie and Roof back as far as the Poplar Road, then refused to take the cruiser closer. The red signal was visible through mist before the shed was. Its reflection lay broken in every ditch and puddle. In the signal room, Stagg sat by the stove with a mug in both hands, looking smaller than he had in the rain. "Where's Silas?" Elsie asked. "Below. Said he needed to hear the East relief. Told me if I followed, he'd throw me into water educationally." Stagg reached into his pocket. "He said to give you this if you came back." He handed her a waxed cloth packet. Inside lay a flat brass key and a wooden token marked E-Relief with a notch cut from one corner. The East Passage sounded different from the West. Less steady pull, more gulp and pause. Elsie followed chalk marks Silas had left on the brick and found him kneeling beside an open panel with one arm deep in a wooden housing. Sweat shone on his forehead despite the cold. "You came," he said. "You expected me. I hoped I was wrong. Hand me the token." She did. He fitted it into a slot and turned. A latch released somewhere below with a hollow sigh. "What's wrong?" East Relief float is fouled. "Not Kane. Something in the well. West will hold until morning, only if the east side settles, before the wind tide pushes Black Pond against it." "There's tide here?" "Wind tide. Wide water goes where north wind tells it." He pointed to a round well set into the floor. Through the grate, Elsie saw a pale float rising and falling, stopped by a dark bundle wedged against the guide rail. She removed the bolts with the brass key, tied a rope around her waist, and lay flat with one arm in the well. The water swallowed her sleeve to the shoulder. Her fingers touched oilcloth, slick and firm. She hooked the cord and pulled. The bundle came loose with a sucking pop. The float dropped. The whole gallery answered. Water rushed through an unseen gate. Rods rattled. The red signal bell rang once overhead, then softened. Somewhere in the round chamber, a weight rose with a slow mechanical purr. Elsie sat back with the bundle in her lap. Silas stared at it as if she had pulled a face from the water. "What is it?" He untied the green cord carefully. Inside were thin copper plates stamped with dates and names, and a photograph sealed behind clouded celluloid. Elsie wiped it with her sleeve. 6 people stood beside the signal mast when it was newly painted. 3 men, 2 women, and a boy no older than Toby. The boy held a red flag too large for him. Silas touched the edge of the picture. "That boy was my father." "Why hide it in the float well?" "My grandfather did not trust offices. Flood took the section house. Fire took the depot. Sale took the ledgers. He said if the railroad forgot Bramble, Bramble should keep proof where only a worker would find it." Elsie read the copper plates. Bramble cut waterlock. Signal number 7. Active safety apparatus. Do not remove. Then names. Croft, Ilya, Dace, Sorrel, Oang, Miriam, follow, James. Repairs stamped across decades. This proves it isn't scrap, she said, if honest eyes read it. Then we make copies before dishonest hands learn where it is. Silas smiled faintly. You have a harsh faith in paper. No, I have faith in copies. They returned to the signal room with the plates wrapped but no longer hidden. The deputy came back with a camera, 2 roadmen, and a woman from the county office, who started to say no record existed of active water infrastructure, then stopped when Silas placed the copper plates under her lamp. Stagg read over her shoulder. Ruth read from the side, lips moving like Toby's. Outside, the red signal still burned, but it no longer felt like an accusation. It felt like a worker holding up one tired hand until everyone with a shovel got clear. They worked into the night. Stagg used his jack and crib blocks under Silas's instruction. Ruth carried clamps. The roadmen hauled rope and swore less after the floor bell rang beneath their feet. Elsie moved between the round chamber and the west hatch until her body became one long ache. Silas listened to pipes with his palm and named changes before the gauges showed them. Near midnight, the rain stopped. Frogs began speaking in the ditches. Cold slid into the marsh behind the weather. Elsie stepped outside beside the signal mast, keeping clear of the track. The red lamp painted her hands. Across the rails, Briar Junction's water tower rose over the poplars, closer now than it had ever seemed while she was trying to reach it. Silas came out and stood with his weight on the forked pole. "Why stay here all these years?" she asked. "Because I left once," he said. "My father kept the lamp after the freight stopped. Said water did not care what schedule men canceled. I went north to work on dry concrete. Came back 3 years later and found him with one leg ruined from a winter repair he had done alone. He kept it red through a flood. No one thanked him because no one knew what had been spared. So you stayed from guilt. At first. Guilt rots if you store it too long. Later I stayed because I learned the difference between useless and unseen." Elsie thought of locked pay offices, closed doors, and people who vanished the moment they needed what they had earned. Unseen things still break. "Yes," Silas said. "They also hold." Near 3 in the morning, the east gauge cleared, and the west anchor stopped ticking under strain. Silas let Elsie and Ruth pull the black reset lever in the round chamber together. It resisted through its whole arc, then settled into a worn notch. The red weight rose, white dropped. Outside, with a click too small for the hours behind it, the signal changed from red to a dim white lunar glow. Not green. Silas explained that green belonged to moving rail, and no rail would move until engineers came with instruments and honest questions. White meant the lock had returned to watch. White meant the mat was sleeping. Not safe forever. Not safe for fools. But no longer tearing itself apart. Everyone stood in the signal room and looked at the lamp as if it were morning. At actual dawn, the town arrived in pieces. First, the nurse in a borrowed pickup with Toby, bundled in the passenger seat because he had woken and demanded to see whether the signal was still red. Then the feed store owner with a crate of nails and a thermos. Then 2 more road workers. The county woman took photographs of the copper plates and wrote until her fingers stiffened. Stagg signed a statement suspending the pickup order and agreeing to replace the west rod he had cut. He looked as if every stroke of the pen tasted like nails. Ruth signed below him and added that the red lamp had warned them before the ground moved. Copies of the plates went to the clinic, the feed store, the church office, the county file, and the wall of the signal room. Elsie insisted, until everyone grew tired of disagreeing. Silas watched her with a look she could not name. "You plan for fire," he said. "I plan for people." They did not cross the tracks that day. They used Walker's throat, with Toby counting the doors aloud and the nurse waiting by the poplar steps. At the hollow span, he asked for Elsie's hand. only when he needed it. She gave it without making a lesson of it. They stayed in Briar Junction while Toby healed. At first it was because the nurse wanted him near the steam kettle. Then, because the county needed Elsie to copy the old maps in a hand, clear enough for strangers. Then, because Silas needed a brace for his knee, and would not ask for one. Leaving had always been Elsie's way of staying ahead of disappointment. But Bramble Cut made leaving feel less like escape, and more like abandoning a machine still open on the table. The work was not noble in the way stories like to make work noble. It was cold and repetitive. They scrubbed glass tubes, labeled pipes, replaced rotten boards in the underwalk, and hung the saw-cut piece of west rod on the wall with the bright wound facing outward. Silas taught by refusing to hurry. He made Elsie listen to the difference between a float chain ticking and a rod chattering. He made Toby draw the gauge board 3 times until every notch was correct. He never called the room a refuge. A refuge was where a person hid from weather. Bramble Cut was where people admitted weather existed and made agreements with it. The first engineer arrived 3 days later in polished boots that lost their shine before he reached the door. He came with a tripod, a probe rod, and the brittle patience of a man who expected superstition and found mechanisms instead. 2 assistants followed with measuring tape and a box of stakes. They began by asking the deputy where the abandoned feature was located. Silas heard the word abandoned from inside the signal room and closed the stove door a little harder than necessary. Elsie did not argue for him. She took the engineer to the round chamber and let him watch the wheel turn. She showed him the west rod, where the new clamp sat over the wounded iron, then the gauge glass, then the copper plates with their stamped dates. Toby, still wrapped in a scarf, stood by the map table and corrected the assistant, who called the east relief a drain. "It isn't a drain," Toby said. "A drain only empties. This balances." The assistant blinked, looked at Silas, and then wrote balance instead. The engineer asked Elsie how she knew the west anchor had been under pull before it shifted. A month earlier, she might have stepped back and waited for an older voice to answer. Now she put her palm on the pipe the way Silas had taught her and waited through 3 ticks. Because this chatter was fast before the cut was chained. After the water dropped, it slowed. If you put your probe on the far shoulder, you'll feel the mat still leaning west. He did, and the expression on his face changed. Not softened, exactly. Adjusted. The room had done to him what it had done to Elsie, made pride take off its coat before entering. They spent that afternoon setting stakes where no one was allowed to stand. The engineer marked the railbed as a floating timber mat, active but restricted. The county woman wrote those words twice, once for the file and once for the copy Elsie demanded. When the assistants wanted to cross the rails for a shorter angle, Toby pointed at the new signboard drying against the wall and said, "You can read, right?" Roof laughed so hard he had to go outside. No one called the signal dead after that, at least not where Elsie could hear. That evening, after the engineer left, Elsie found the original pay stub from the canning shed drying in her coat pocket. The ink blurred by rain until the numbers looked like insects. She almost threw it into the stove. Instead, she pinned it beside the copied copper plates for one night only. Toby asked why. "So I remember the difference," she said. "Between what?" "Paper that hides work and paper that protects it." By morning, she took the stub down and folded it away. The copper copies stayed. Weeks later, a sign went up at the edge of the right-of-way. It did not say abandoned. It did not say keep out in the lazy way of signs no one meant to enforce. It showed the old round signal and 3 words beneath it. Red means wait. Under that, in smaller letters, was the sentence Toby had argued for until the county painter gave in. The track may look like land. Silas pretended it was too long. Elsie saw him touch the words once when no one was meant to be watching. On the first clear evening after the sign dried, Elsie walked with Toby to the near side of the railbed. The marsh held the last copper light in strips of water between the reeds. The signal showed white. Beyond the tracks, Briar Junction rose through the poplars. Behind them, smoke lifted from the signal house pipe. "Do you think we'll leave in spring?" Toby asked. Elsie looked at the rails, at the ditches, at the brick room that had stopped them with a red eye and demanded they learn its hidden weight before taking another step. She thought of all the places that had let them pass through without learning their names, and of this one, which had frightened them first, and then given them work that mattered. "Maybe," she said. Toby made a doubtful sound. "That means no." "It means I don't know. You always know." "No," Elsie said. "I usually move before I have to find out." From the signal house, Silas raised his pole. "If you two are thinking of crossing, think better." Toby called back. "White means ask first. White means use the underwalk unless an old man says otherwise." Elsie laughed, and the sound startled a bird from the reeds. It flew low over the ditches, choosing air over every doubtful surface. They did not cross the tracks. They took the marked path down to Walker's throat, counted the doors, stepped around the repaired hollow span, and came up on the far side with clean mud on their boots and the town ahead. Behind them, the old signal held its white lamp against the blue cold, ready to turn red again whenever the bog forgot its manners and the living needed to be warned. Elsie looked back once from the poplar road. The signal house was small in the distance, half brick, half vine, no longer hidden and not entirely claimed. For the first time in a long while, the road in front of her did not feel like escape. It felt like one of several ways back,